They are said to be the oldest mythical creature in the whole of North America. The Wampanoag are an indigenous people of the northeastern woodlands, whose name means people of the first light. They are the original inhabitants of what is now Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and parts of eastern Connecticut. The Wampanoag lived in villages along the coast and inland rivers, practicing a seasonal way of life. Fishing, hunting, farming corn, beans, and squash, and moving with the rhythms of the land. They are perhaps best known in American history as the native nation who made contact with the Pilgrims at Plymouth in 1620, and whose leader, Massasoit, forged an early treaty of alliance. The Wampanoag survived epidemics and colonization, and despite centuries of hardship, they remain a strong, living nation today, with communities such as Mashpee and Aquinnah continuing their traditions, language, and stories. Among their most powerful and enduring legends are those of the Pukwudgies, little people of the Wampanoag who haunt the deep woods and ledges of New England. In story after story, they are small, slippery, and deadly clever. Shapeshifters who can appear and vanish at will, porcupine at the back and almost human at the front, capable of magic, mischief, and murder. The old tales the Wampanoag tell and the modern sightings people report both keep the same warning. Do not meddle with these creatures. If they choose you, your life will never be the same.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word.
This is a conspiracy channel.
Welcome to the Hush channel. The Pukwudgies' look is uncanny. Witnesses describe a 2 to 3 foot being, sometimes pale gray, sometimes brownish with big ears, long noses, large lips, and hair on the arms and scalp. Some stories say the front half looks almost human, while the back half bristles with quills like a porcupine, a grotesque half troll, half animal form that can walk upright. They can vanish in a blink or change into animals. They can throw rocks, fire poison arrows, conjure flame, or use sand to blind a victim. In legend, they kidnap people, push them off cliffs, stab with small knives and spears, or lure the unwary so deep into the woods they are never seen again. These little people were not always enemies of humankind. Wampanoag lore remembers a time when Pukwudgies lived beside people and even aided them. The change came when jealousy and pride grew. The Wampanoag tell of Moshop, a giant culture hero and creator figure who provided for the people. Granny Squannet, also called Squannet, was his wife and a helper of humankind. The Pukwudgies grew resentful of the worship and affection shown to Moshop. When they turned hostile, the Wampanoag appealed to Moshop and Squannet for help. Moshop is said to have shaken or tossed the Pukwudgies across the land. Some versions say he scattered or exiled many to distant places. The survivors later returned and took brutal revenge. They lured Moshop's sons and shot them with magical arrows, and in some versions even slew Moshop himself or drove him into sorrowful retreat. From then on, the Pukwudgies were enemies of the tribe and of people in general. The Pukwudgies' magic is not only violent, it is possessive. Stories say they fixate on those who first see them. One sighting becomes a tether that draws repeat encounters. Joan's account, told of in local retellings, follows this pattern. Walking her dog in Freetown State Forest, she found Sid flat in the leaves and a 2-foot Pukwudgie sitting on a rock 10 feet away. He stared at her with an empty calm, and Joan felt as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. The whole meeting lasted under 30 seconds, but afterward the creature returned 3 separate times to peer in at her bedroom window. She never saw it speak or attack, it only watched. Accounts like Joan's, strange, quiet, intimate, are common in retellings of encounters in Massachusetts woods. The Pukwudgies' look is uncanny. Witnesses describe a 2 to 3 foot being, sometimes pale gray, sometimes brownish with big ears, long noses, large lips, and hair on the arms and scalp. Some stories say the front half looks almost human, while the back half bristles with quills like a porcupine, a grotesque half troll, half animal form that can walk upright. They can vanish in a blink or change into animals. They can throw rocks, fire poison arrows, conjure flame, or use sand to blind a victim. In legend, they kidnap people, push them off cliffs, stab with small knives and spears, or lure the unwary so deep into the woods they are never seen again. These little people were not always enemies of humankind. Wampanoag lore remembers a time when Pukwudgies lived beside people and even aided them. The change came when jealousy and pride grew. The Wampanoag tell of Moshop, a giant culture hero and creator figure who provided for the people. Granny Squannet, also called Squannet, was his wife and a helper of humankind. The Pukwudgies grew resentful of the worship and affection shown to Moshup. When they turned hostile, the Wampanoag appealed to Moshup and Squannet for help. Moshup is said to have shaken or tossed the Pukwudgies across the land. Some versions say he scattered or exiled many to distant places. The survivors later returned and took brutal revenge. They lured Moshup's sons and shot them with magical arrows, and in some versions even slew Moshup himself or drove him into sorrowful retreat. From then on, the Pukwudgies were enemies of the tribe and of people in general. The Pukwudgies' magic is not only violent, it is possessive. Stories say they fixate on those who first see them. One sighting becomes a tether that draws repeat encounters. Joan's account, told of in local retellings, follows this pattern. Walking her dog in Freetown State Forest, she found Sid flat in the leaves and a 2-foot Pukwudgie sitting on a rock 10 feet away. He stared at her with an empty calm, and Joan felt as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. The whole meeting lasted under 30 seconds, but afterward the creature returned 3 separate times to peer in at her bedroom window. She never saw it speak or attack, it only watched. Accounts like Joan's, strange, quiet, intimate, are common in retellings of encounters in Massachusetts woods. In 1675, tensions escalated into what is now known as King Philip's War, as indigenous groups sought to drive English settlers from the land. The war lasted approximately 14 months. Multiple indigenous groups allied with the Wampanoag. Metacomet was ultimately captured and executed by English forces. Much of the conflict took place in and around Hockomock Swamp. It is considered one of the deadliest conflicts in American history relative to population size. Approximately 75 to 80% of indigenous people in the region were killed, along with about 25% of the colonial population. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples recognized this area as sacred, yet also as a place of powerful, sometimes dark energy, a place that felt sentient. According to cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman's book Mysterious America, as of 1998, there were 2,635 locations in the United States named after the devil. Among these is Hockomock, an Algonquian-derived term often interpreted as meaning devil or evil spirit. The term has been applied to multiple locations across the U.S., including sites in Maine, New Jersey, Minnesota, and Massachusetts, one of which is Hockomock Swamp itself. In a Depression-era Works Progress Administration guide, the swamp was also referred to as Hokomoko, meaning evil spirit. Hockomock Swamp spans much of the Bridgewater Triangle. During an archaeological expedition, researchers uncovered an 8,000-year-old burial site on Grassy Island within the swamp. The graves were opened, and something unusual was reported. A substance identified as red ochre, an iron-rich pigment commonly used in ancient burials, was said to bubble and dissolve. Even more strange, every photograph taken at the site reportedly failed to develop. The Taunton River, which flows through the Bridgewater Triangle, includes the Hockomock Swamp within its watershed. It is the longest undammed coastal river in New England and one of the flattest, dropping only about 20 feet in elevation along its entire length. Roughly 30 miles upstream, near the edge of Hockomock Swamp, lies Dighton Rock, a 40-ton sandstone boulder covered in mysterious carvings. It sits directly across from the Grassy Island burial grounds. Now, this is where my research and theory comes into play. Now, remember, Appalachia used to extend continuously all the way to the British Isles, where the Gales were, and how, before researchers stated so, I was talking about artifacts found in the Bridgewater Triangle that showed that the Gales were there. I surmised that the Gales, had to be a part of the Vikings. This was before the confirmation from researchers arrived, because initially, researchers ignored the facts and lore of Gales living in Egypt before dwelling in the British Isles, where they are today. Therefore, they ignored artifacts like Dighton Rock and how it came to be marked as so. This is likely why this same area, called the Bridgewater Triangle, where Pukwudgies are said to dwell, is also where artifacts like Dighton Rock exist. It shows evidence via markings from groups such as the Egyptians, Phoenicians, Vikings, and Portuguese. The Gales left Scythia, migrated to Egypt, and dwelled there for a few generations, were exiled, settled the majority of the Mediterranean coast outside of Egypt, including Crete and the Iberian Peninsula, which includes Portugal, established Phoenicia, became the quote-unquote mysterious sea peoples, and the Iberian Peninsula group migrated to the British Isles, where they still reside today, and are most commonly known as Irish and Scottish. Here, some of them became known as Vikings, alongside their Scandinavian, Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish counterparts. It makes sense that if these people traveled to the Americas, Dighton Rock would have such markings, given the history of the Gales. I talk more in detail about this in my Tales of the Gales and Bridgewater Triangle tales. But the area they traveled to resembled the mystical land of the wild British Isles, as far as entities were concerned, because it was once all connected.
I grew up about a half-hour's drive away from Boston, in a house that's easily 200 years old. It was built into the side of a hill, and when you first walk in, to your immediate left are stairs to the second floor, and to your immediate right is the living room, which has a bay window. Through a short hallway, next to the stairs, with a door is the kitchen, and that splits off to several other doors for the basement, bathroom, backyard, pantry, laundry, and a bedroom, in the middle off the kitchen on the right. Against the kitchen's back wall were two big windows that overlooked the downslope of the hill, and to their right is an old-fashioned lamp built into the wall, with one of those plastic pins that you slide left or right to turn it on and off. I lived in that bedroom, so I won't go into the rest of the layout. So 15 years ago, my mom used to go to work at 3 a.m. I was always a night owl, and I remember it was a month before Easter and a Saturday because I didn't have school. She had already gone, and it was getting close to 4 a.m., so I went to turn off that little lamp and go to bed. I took my glasses off and went into the kitchen, and I hear a little clicking and look to my left, towards the open doorway to the living room. It was my German shepherd, Jade, who always slept by my bed. So I leaned forward and said, "What are you doing out here, Jade?" Just then, I heard my dog jump off my bed from my room. That was when I realized the thing I was looking at was most certainly not my dog. It stood perhaps 3 feet tall, on 2 legs, and had wrinkled skin. It had somewhat leathery, pointed ears that stuck out from its head and had reddish-brown hair. It had a disheveled look. You could see the individual hairs and even a widow's peak through the soft lamplight into the room beyond, and it wore what looked like hides to me. It even had some kind of moccasins or boots on, enough that they clicked on the tile when it walked. Forgot to mention that it had tawny skin, like the color of a faded leather jacket, and a rather bulbous nose. Not unnaturally so, more like old human person, kind of large. It also had a wide mouth, but again, not unnaturally so. Think Aerosmith. The thing took a few waddled steps towards me and outstretched its hands like you picture in your head in any monster movie. I did the only thing I could, being 16 with no cell phone, no camera, and nobody home. "You're not Jade." I ran to my room, slammed and locked the door, and kept my light on, not leaving until the sun came up. I didn't go to bed until that afternoon when my mom came home. I don't sleepwalk. I've never had sleep paralysis. Our CO detectors were regularly checked by the city, and I have no history of mental illness. Swear to God, it happened.
When my sister and I were young, we both saw a Pukwudgie in our bedroom. We shared a bunk bed in a trailer as kids, and I slept on the bottom. She was on the top. I was 4 or 5. She was 7, I think. Late one night, when I was getting ready to fall asleep, I saw something moving out the corner of my eye. A 3-foot-tall, slightly glowing grayish-blue goblin/troll-looking figure entered into our bedroom. It moved slowly as if it were just wandering. It had an elongated nose, fingers, ears, feet, and long hedgehog-type hair down its back, long, skinny torso, but fit and lean with muscle. The entity was wearing a Native American type of outfit as far as the cloth over its body. The entity walked into the middle of the room, stopped, and looked at both of us with a blank stare, staring into our eyes. We were both dead quiet. It was weird. I didn't feel scared or threatened when it looked at me. It's more like a feeling of respect and weariness. The stare didn't last long. The entity then looked forward and continued its walk and disappeared through the wall, never to be seen again. I remember asking my sister, "Did you see that?" And she said, "Yes!" I then grabbed my Nerf gun that was on my bed next to me. I just got and told my sister that if it comes back, I'll shoot it. She said okay, and we went to sleep. Told our parents they didn't believe us. No big deal, we weren't distressed about it. But we did both remember the exact details of our sighting throughout the years growing up and bring it up every now and then. As kids, and growing into adulthood, we had no idea what we saw. We just remembered the exact details of it. Fast forward to when I was in my 20s, I was watching a ghost hunting show. I forgot the name of it, but I think it was a group of college students. This group would describe what type or ghost and go beyond just saying, "You have ghosts." Anyways, they were describing the ghost they thought was haunting the property, started saying this ghost is from Native American folklore. It's 2 to 3 feet tall and gray. Hold the phone! Boy, did my ears ever perk up. Continuing, they said it likes to prank and lead people into trouble. Then they finally said the ghost they thought it was, Pukwudgie. I immediately searched Google Images, and wow, I never would have thought I'd see that thing again. Many pictures and instances. What a gut-wrenching feeling. I sent a picture of the Pukwudgie to my sister via text message. I didn't tell her what it was I had found yet, only sent the photo. She said, "OMG, where the fuck did you find that? That is the thing we saw that night." We then talked a while on the phone, recalling details yet again on what we saw all those years ago, but with more uneasiness and excitement this time. Can't believe how random that was. Got to reading all about the folklore and searching images. Pretty good depictions of what they look like. Some scary ones too. The one we saw didn't have big fangs or claws that I remember, or it chose not to show it to us as we weren't a threat.
The following occurred in the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, Jersey side, on the stretch of Old Mine Road between the parking lots for Van Campen's Glen and the Upper Glen, early March of 2021. Over many years, I've come to be intimately familiar with the Gap, and my experiences there have had a profound effect on the person I am today. I have had more than a few run-ins with coyotes, bobcats, snapping turtles, families of black bears, owls and raptors, timber rattlers and copperheads, porcupines, foxes, even a terrifying encounter with a trail-crazy thru-hiker who might have been about to make my friends and I his first kill. I am by no means an expert in biology/zoology. I'm just a rambling country boy who has been up close to a lot of nature for all of my life. There is so little doubt in my mind that the experience that another driver and I had on this particular night was paranormal in nature and not a case of animal misidentification. Now, with that out of the way, this was my first real post-winter hike of the year, and the early spring weather during the day was sunny and fantastic. Around 5:40 p.m., a light rainstorm commenced, and suddenly, it was very dark out as I got to my car, parked at the historic Calno Schoolhouse. Just before making a left turn on Old Mine Road, I saw the glow of a truck's headlights to my right. My instinct was to floor it and get in front of them, but I hesitated at the last second in case it was a park ranger making their rounds. For those who have never been down this section of the Old Mine Road, know that the speed limit is listed as 15 miles per hour, but the road is so riddled with potholes that it has been a national embarrassment for decades. Non-locals will drive less than 5 miles per hour the entire way, including up and down the steepest hill in New Jersey, riding their brakes the entire way down, grinding gears going 5 miles per hour up. It behooves locals to get in front of tourists whenever possible. As fate would have it, the vehicle that passed me was neither a Smoky or a Slowpoke. It was a red recent model Chevy Silverado with Pennsylvania plates. I was relieved to see that whoever was behind the wheel of the truck had driven here before because they navigated the potholes and craters like a pro at a respectable pace. I remained about 2 car lengths behind them and largely followed their lead when it came to navigating the cratered road. After passing the main parking area for Van Campen's Glen, the road ascends slightly up a hill, then quickly levels out. It was at this section that the red Silverado first hit its brakes, not hard, but a firm tap to slow down. The truck continued to slowly roll forward for a few more seconds, only for the brake lights to fully light, and the Chevy came to a complete stop. I was still about a car and a half length away when I came to a halt behind them, wondering if there was an animal or downed tree in the road. On the side of the road we were facing, I could see something moving, swaying erratically and unnaturally in the dim light. At first I thought it was a bush or branch blowing in the wind, but the movement was just so odd and irregular. I could see the silhouette of the driver as he pushed his face closer to the driver's side window. I could now see that this was no bush or tree blowing in the wind, but a large fox standing upright on its hind legs. Wow, that thing must be sick or rabid, I thought. There was a 2-3 second pause, then I see a big stick being violently jabbed right into the truck's door, window, and side mirror. My mind couldn't process fast enough what the fuck was happening. Like a bat out of hell, the truck threw it into drive and peeled out at full speed. They nearly lost control and started to fishtail at the top of a hill, but were just able to keep it on the road. Their tail lights vanished around a bend seconds later. I've seen plenty of country boys peel rubber in their trucks, but this looked like something out of a movie or a stunt show. This guy was driving perfectly fine, then instantly peels off and almost crashes. Completely bewildered at what I just witnessed, I hit the high beams. I would describe the motion this thing was making as akin to bouncing on the balls of one's feet while swaying around, reminiscent of the bizarre movements severely mentally ill patients are known to make. It stood about 3.5, maybe 4 feet tall, and it was leaning forward with its head turned downward. In a burst of a few seconds, I first noticed that this freak of a fox had no eyes in its sockets, nor did it have paws but small little human hands wrapped in cloth or leather binding. The head jolted upward to reveal an ugly, ancient-looking, humanesque face that was beneath the fox skin it was wearing. It gave me a malicious, shit-eating grin and jolted at my car door with what I'm going to call a staff or rattle. It was about half the length of its body and had 3 orange ornaments on it that resembled bell peppers, maracas, or old-school Christmas lights, sort of positioned like a trident. There might have been white carvings in the body of the staff and things wrapped around it, but all this happened so fast it's hard to really dial in the finer details. Unlike the Silverado, my car was never struck with the rattle. This entity just shook the rattle violently near my window to scare me off, and looked like it was muttering and laughing while it was menacing me. As I sped off, I said out loud a few times, "Yes, you really just saw that. Yes, that really just happened." Over and over, until the other voice in my mind was telling me it didn't happen. It couldn't happen. It felt like I was in a dream, and the rush of adrenaline was in control at that point. But I knew it wasn't a dream, and I wasn't going to be able to write it off as one. I started to repeat out loud what I just experienced to keep it fresh in my mind's eye, trying not to add details or forget others. I felt no fear, but actually felt extremely grateful and excited to have just witnessed what I did. Not having damage to my car was just an added bonus. I'm not sure how the driver of the Silverado explained any damage to their insurance provider besides saying a buck ran into the side of it. The little man's face reminded me of some of the hard-working, indigenous people from Meso and South America I have done construction and pool care jobs with, people with a lot of Mayan/Amerindian ancestry. If you look at a picture of the actor Fred Ward and imagine him as a 4-foot-tall indigenous trickster dude from Guatemala, Nicaragua, Belize, etc., you might get an idea of what I'm trying to convey. Deep-set eyes and a tough, proud face. I am not positive at what the other driver and I encountered, but I believe it was an ancient trickster spirit, a Pukwudgie. Laugh all you want, but the non-paranormal explanation is far more disturbing to me. A little person dressing up in fox skins at night to fuck with passerby with a maraca staff. The Lenni Lenape nations who inhabited the Delaware Water Gap for thousands of years wouldn't be so quick to chuckle or roll their eyes. I don't feel like we were in immediate danger as long as we remained in our vehicles. It seemed like its intention was to scare and mess with us, maybe trying to keep outsiders out of the area. I have been trying to find more information on the staff/rattle it had, as I have seen similar depictions in Native American research works in the past. It's similar to many examples of spirit/medicine staffs found online, but I cannot recall it having any feathers on it, only the 3 orange Christmas tree light-esque bulbs.
The next clip comes from Dark Hour Paranormal's YouTube channel, where they interview a gentleman named Bill Russo, who not only encountered a Pukwudgie, but unlike the others we've heard tonight, Bill had an actual verbal exchange with a Pukwudgie. I do encourage you to check out the full video and Dark Hour Paranormal's YouTube channel. Both the link to the video of the interview and Dark Hour Paranormal's channel are in the description. The full interview is 46 minutes. Here is just an 8-minute clip.
Now, I think that I'm one of the few people that has seen this creature that we're calling a Pukwudgie. But I think the main thing is I don't know anyone else that ever had a conversation with the creature. So that's what we'll talk about. Let's go back in time to the 1990s. Town of Raynham. Everybody knows where it is. It's in the Bridgewater Triangle. It's the town next to Bridgewater.
Yep.
And where I lived was about a mile from the Nip, Lake Nipponicket, which is one of the hot spots. And my house abutted the High Tees, which is another hot spot, and not far from the Hockomock Swamp. All of these hot spots, but I had never heard of the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm not a paranormal guy, as I told you. I've never looked at the stars, never looked for UFOs, just never was into that. So I had a job at that time where I worked 3:30 to midnight at the Raynham Iron Works. And I got home at midnight, and I take a walk with my dog Samantha every night. Before I did anything else, Sammy and I would faithfully take our walk. Now, we walked around our street, and we walked sometimes through the High Tees. So it was a route that was pretty much constant, but it varied slightly, but it fairly constant. Now, I have to tell you about the town of Raynham. Back in the 1990s, as I told you before, it's a small town. It was probably 5,000 or 6,000 people, a working class town, which means nobody watched Johnny Carson at 11:30 at night. They were in bed. They were hardworking people. They had to get up in the morning. So consequently, when I walked with Samantha, there were no lights on. I don't think I ever remember seeing a single light on at night. There were no cars on the street. And as I told you before, the town of Raymond did not have a midnight shift for the police officers. The last cop went home at midnight, and he called up the city of Taunton next door and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. You guys got it." So the city of Taunton would sit there and take the phone call, which hardly ever came. Back in those days, everybody got the newspaper, and the newspaper had a thing called the police blotter. Every day they'd publish all the calls that were phoned into the police departments, and there'd be nothing from midnight to 6 in the town of Raynham. So, again, the town was really, really quiet after midnight. I was the only person out. I rarely saw a car passing. So Sam and I walked our route, generally the same route that we always walk. And on the way home that night, I was less than 200-300 yards from home when Sammy, an 80-pound dog, she was a mix between a Rottweiler and a Shepherd, pretty big girl. Sammy was pulling on her leash. "Sam, what's wrong?" Now, she's a calm dog. She loved the walks, and she enjoyed the walks, but all of a sudden, she was straining at that leash and starting to whimper. Something was scaring my dog, but I have no idea what it is at this point. "What's the matter, Sam? Sam, what's wrong? Sam, what's wrong?" And then I heard what was bothering her. Kia, he wants you. Kia, he wants you. These strange noises coming from I don't know where. I walked a little further back towards my house, and suddenly in the glow of a street light, I saw this strange thing that I thought was a kid. This was the Halloween season. So I thought it was on the sidewalk at that point, and I thought, well, this is a kid. And I said, "Hey, are you all right? Are you okay? Do you need help? Where do you live?" And it started beckoning me with this paw or hand. "Kia, he wants you. Choo, he wants you. Now I'm still thinking it's a kid. "Are you okay? Can I help you?" Kia. This hand or paw still beckoning me, and it wasn't responding to me. I was talking to it, but it never said anything except, Kia, he wants you. I said, "Are you all right? Do you need help? Can I help you?" Kia, he wants you. And now Sammy was absolutely frightened. I was torn. This little creature didn't look scary. It looked kind of like a teddy bear. The pictures, there's an artist in Boston, John Gig, and he did the illustration for the Bridgewater Triangle movie, and he talked with me. He did 3 or 4 drawings. I said, John, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. And then he came up with that final drawing. I think everybody's seen it. I said, John, that's it, that's what I saw. So you look at that picture and you see what I saw. That's not a threatening thing.
No.
It was, kind of a cute little thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm torn. Sammy's afraid of it. Sammy's not afraid of anything. She's a Rottweiler Shepherd. Rottweiler Shepherds, they're not babies. But she was afraid of that. So part of me is saying, I want to talk to this thing. And the other part of me is saying, I better get out of here quick. So I don't know how long it was, probably not more than 3 or 4 minutes. But Sammy's fear convinced me that I better go home. So I went home, went in, told my wife what I saw, and then I pretty much spent the whole night or most of the night just thinking about it. And I said, well, what was this thing saying, Kia, 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 Iwanshu, Kia, Kia? I think it was trying to speak English. I think it's a creature that obviously had intelligence and maybe it had its own language and was trying to speak English. Kia, Kia, come here, come here. And obviously the beckoning means come here, beckoning with its paw or hand. Kia, Kia, Iwanshu, we want you. We want you. So that led me to believe that it was a representative of a larger group, that there were more of these things. We want you. Come here, come here. So I told my wife about it and a few other people, not a lot of people. For quite a while, I didn't say a whole lot. But I went out the next night and didn't see it again. And the next night, and so on for a few more years, and I never saw it again. And I wish I had. I told you the other day when we talked that if I see it again, Sam has long since passed away. If I see it again, I'm going to approach it. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be fatal. We talked about that before, you and I. I don't necessarily think it's going to be fatal. They say, the people who talk about these Pukwudgies, that they can't come after you, that they have to draw you into their space. That doesn't make any sense to me. If something's evil, it's not going to have an imaginary line that it can't cross. If something's evil, it's going to come at me. And it didn't. Kia, he wants you. So I have regrets that I didn't speak with it, that I didn't go into its space.
It's interesting that you bring up, the whole idea that, when you approach something like this, they may try to lure you in. And of course, there may be some sort of fateful moment that they capture you, take you, push you off a cliff. I mean, a lot of these things have been mentioned when it comes to the legend of the Pukwudgie. But, as we had discussed a little bit the other night when we were talking, bring that parallel into vampires, inviting them into your home when they knock on the door to cross the threshold. The black-eyed children are the same exact way. They can't come home unless you give them permission. I think in some small way, if you were to go to that creature, you're giving the permission within the action, within the behavior, but it's so subtle. Necessarily think about that when we're making a conscious decision, having a lot of physical movement with decisions that we make rather than something a little bit more underlying.
Pukwudgie is one of the names used for small, hairy, magical humanoid beings said to live in the forests of New England. In a broad sense, you could compare them to fairies, but not the delicate, glittery kind people think of like Tinkerbell. These are something much rougher, more rugged, the kind of being that actually fits the landscape here. Dense woods, rocky ground, and poison ivy creeping through everything. The term Pukwudgie itself is relatively modern in its use across New England. Indigenous peoples of the region had their own names for these beings, including Makiawi Sug, Makumwa Suk, and Makumweswak. The word Pukwudgie is believed to originate from the Ojibwa of the Midwest, where it was used to describe similar small supernatural beings. Over time, the term spread eastward and became widely used in New England, especially in Massachusetts.